Good morning, and welcome to Cup of Faith on Wednesday, March the 17th. And in case you didn't know it, today is St. Patrick's Day. Now, I don't have a St. Patrick's Day story for you, but I do have an Irish story for you. My grandfather, my dad's father, was actually born in Ireland, and I had never been my entire life, but I did have the opportunity once to go for an international meeting related to poverty and homelessness. And Brendan and I also happened to have a friend that lived there who had multiple sclerosis. So while I was there, I thought I would take the opportunity to visit her. Her name was Donna. So our conference was in Belfast, and in order to see my friend, I would take the train up to Londonderry, because that's where I thought she lived. So I took the train to Londonderry and got off and walked out of the train station, and there was cabs there, and I handed the address to the cab driver and said, "Can you take me to this place?" And the cab driver said, "Well, where's that?" And I said, "Well, I was hoping you would know because I don't live here." So he phoned into dispatch and found out that I had overshot the address of my friend by about 30 minutes, 50 kilometers. And since I didn't know what my options were, I just hired this cab driver to drive me back, to double back, so I could see my friend. Sometimes our journeys take the long way around, don't they? For a few minutes today, I want to talk about our legacies and how to leave a meaningful legacy. I came across a story, allow me to read it. It says, Danny Lloyd was a generous man, giving away many of his possessions in the months before he died. He even left his car to 12 different friends. He was a ticket scalper and broker, or as he called it, a facilitator of supply and demand economics. If you are attending the memorial service, please ignore Danny's scalper friends who might be offering to upgrade your seat for a small price. Now that's kind of a fun legacy. Let's think for a few moments about our legacy. And the thoughts are going to come from Psalm 71, and then we're going to zero in on verse 17. And there's a little bit of background to this, but allow me to raise, first of all, the first point of a legacy. I think our legacy should be one of reliance on God and his intersections in our less than perfect lives. I'd even say our never perfect lives. It's interesting that as you read this psalm in the background, some have offered that King David wrote this somewhere after being 60 years old, in a time when his son Absalom was chasing David and threatening to take his life as he was trying to overtake the kingdom. And King David, in his 60s now, was in exile. And the psalmist also talks about wicked people. One of the things I love about the scriptures is, and especially the Psalms, is how often they raise their need as they plead to God, as they ask God to help, to intersect, to be with them, how they tell God that he is their comforter, their hope, and their fortress, all in the midst of calamity. You see, our God is not just a God for good times. He is a God for our times of calamity, or as I said, our never perfect lives. And he actually says in verses 1 and 2 of Psalm 71, "In you, O Lord, I put my trust. Never let me be put to shame. Deliver me." Notice those words like deliver me in your righteousness, and cause me to escape, and incline your ear to me and save me. So that's the first part of our legacy, is a reliance on God, recognizing that our lives are not perfect. The second point is our legacy should be about God's faithfulness, not our faithfulness. Now, let me just speak personally about that. I falter a lot. I have the great capacity to create crisis. I have the capacity to hurt the people around me. So I have the capacity to fail God. And sometimes I have done that. And I suspect sometimes I will again. So I don't want it ever to be said at my service of how faithful to God I was, but I do want people to talk about how faithful God was to me. In verse 9 of Psalm 71, it says, "Do not cast me away when I am old, and do not forsake me when my strength is gone." This is the faithfulness of God. So, our reliance on God in our less than perfect lives, God's faithfulness over our faithfulness. And just a second before we get to the third and final one. Today is the day that as a church we have a specific prayer theme. And today we are praying about Church of God Youth Ministries. We are praying about and for Joe's Place, Youth for Christ in Moose Job. I expanded that a bit, middle years and high school students and their teachers and their leaders. A lot of you know that our youngest son Cameron is a high school teacher. So we pray for the kids, the leaders, and the teachers. But you and I also have the potential of ministry to youth. Now, how do we do this? I think we have to do this with a sense of vulnerability. Allow me to tell you just briefly that when my mom passed away 4 years ago, we lamented that we really didn't know her. My mom talked a lot. I inherit that from her, but we didn't really know what her fears were. We didn't know her as vulnerable. And I think vulnerability opens up opportunity. And as we are vulnerable with the youth around us, and it can be our kids, it can be our grandkids, it doesn't necessarily mean we're standing outside one of the high schools, but these opportunities to be vulnerable, and at the same time the opportunities to talk about God's faithfulness to us and how God helps us how God helped us in our times of calamity. And with that, allow me to read. "Since my youth, O God, you have taught me, and to this day I declare your marvelous deeds. Even when I am old and gray, do not forsake me, my God, till I declare your power to the next generation, your mighty acts to all who are to come." So our ministry is, I don't think, to stand in judgment of kids with music we don't necessarily like or understand, or how they dress, or none of that. It's more to talk about how God was good to us, because they will face their own calamities, their own times of fear and darkness. And to know that we have journeyed ahead of them, we will journey with them, and God will journey with us, will be our legacy of how we influence ensuing generations. Bless you today. Enjoy your cup of faith. Do big things for God. And I know God's going to do big things for you. Cheers.